and practical approach in clinical care. Oh yeah, I forgot also to say hello to those who are online. A very warm welcome also to Prof. Yati Sunarto through online, and also Professor Muhammad Hakimi there, and also to Dr. Mono there. Hello, Dr. Mono. Welcome. Thanks for joining with us. And also to Prof. Sismindari here, to our college student from our bioethics master program, and also from undergraduates, and also our guests here. Thank you so much for joining with us. And at this point, I would like to invite Professor Sismindari to share her welcome remark. Please, Prof.
Thank you for the time, Mari. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Also, in here or maybe in that online. First of all, on my is Mindari. First of all, on behalf of Master Bioethics and Center of the Center for Bioethics in Medical University UGM. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Prof. Willems from Amsterdam University. Thank you for accepting our invitation. So you could join in here and willing to have the insight and experiment with us. Secondly, it is my great pleasure to come to you all in the today's gift lecture. And actually, this program is designed for broaden your academic work and support your future research journeys. And this bioethics actually always service student knowledge, and by inviting prominent speaker in ethics and health. And this time in Prof. We invite to take a lecture in this afternoon. We truly appreciate the collaboration between the Amsterdam Medical University and also UGM, especially for Center for Bioethics, Center for Bioethics, and Center for Bioethics and Medical Humanity. That actually this already began at 2009 to 2010, offering human resource competency development to further studies, training workshop, research, or include the research collaboration, joint research. On this success of collaboration is that Prof. Supervisor for Dr. Agnes Pratiwi, that is also so it's already have a result from the collaboration. I hope this lecture will give you all new insight, encourage ethical critical thinking, and inspire your future research and practice. Please don't hesitate to ask questions and share your opinion. So connect and interact in today with your own within of study. Once again, thank you for Prof. William, and I enjoy staying in Yogyakarta. I'm sorry I'm not joining for the meeting with you this morning. So we hope this lecture will not only in this our knowledge, but also inspire us to apply in the academic our academic and professional journey. Let's enjoy the session and make the most of this opportunity. Thank you very much, Mbak Aziz.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. For your warm words, and also that sets the perfect tone for our session today. And now let's begin to our keynote lecture. Prof. Dick Willems will join his insight on patient preference, autonomy, and their practical implication in clinical care. Prof. Dick, we are excited to hear from you, and the floor is now yours.
Okay. Selamat siang. So just to say words in Indonesian, I'm so happy that you all speak English because of me, because I'm sorry I'm still not speaking Indonesian. It will, well, maybe it will come someday. Thank you for the very nice words. It's always a pleasure for me to be in Jakarta and to be at the center of medical bioethics and medical humanities. And so I'm very happy to have this all here and people even on the internet. So that's really nice. Can you understand me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Also the people on. Do I need to use a microphone for that? Because I love.
Microphone is necessary.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. Yeah. So because I love to stand up, I don't like to sit that much. So. Yeah. Could you check if they can hear me?
Very clearly.
Yeah, it's clear in offline.
Yeah.
It's clear.
Is it clear? Okay.
Online?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is.
Thank you very much. So this afternoon for I think about an hour we will be talking about one of the basic principles of bioethics, as you know, which is called respect for autonomy. And according to some people, it is the main basic principle of bioethics. Is it still working yet? Or do I move it? No. Oh, so good job. So good job. I'll start again. Yeah, now, well, very loud. A bit. For about an hour, I will be. Did the people not hear me then? Probably. Well, I'll just begin again. So I'll be talking for an hour about the one of the basic principles of bioethics, as you've heard. I mean, it's one of the four principles of Beecham and Childers. And it's for according to some people, it's the most important principle. There are even people say it's maybe the only principle that's really important, and that's the principle of respect for autonomy. And what I'm going to speak with you about is a bit about the history of that concept, so where it came from, why it is so important. But I'll also show you that it's sometimes quite difficult to use. Because as we all know, bioethics is not simply applying a principle and that gives you a solution to a problem. Some problems are more difficult, and then you have to think about what the principle really means in a specific situation. So I'll have some examples, and I'll end also with a tool that you can use to assess the autonomy of the patient, because sometimes that's very important. Not patients are not all equally autonomous. So I'll could you give the next? Doesn't work. Yeah. So I wanted to begin with an example. Now the text is still not there. So yeah, no. So there's text there too. It's not only this image. Yeah. So this is an example that I've been discussing in the hospital with the doctors who were treating this patient. This was a patient, I think, was in his 50s, but he was extremely afraid of doctors. So his family had brought him to the hospital almost under pressure. He was almost forced to go to the hospital by his family because he had blood loss in his stools. So they came to him to the hospital, but he's extremely afraid of everything that happened to his body and that doctors did. So what he had to have is he had to have a colonoscopy. Can I get the next? You can also do the text in this. Yeah. So he had to do a diagnostic colonoscopy. That's of course what the image here shows. And now, the doctors usually say that it's a completely safe examination, but they also usually add and say there's about a 1% chance of a problem. So that's of a perforation of the intestine. And then they will add, that's easy to treat. So it's not, it's annoying, but it's not a very severe complication. Now the question was, because this man was so terribly afraid of doctors, the doctors were afraid that he would run away from the hospital as soon as they would tell this. So they were very afraid that he would not want the investigation if he knew that there was only a very small chance of a complication. Now, to be able to decide autonomously if you take investigation or not, you obviously need the information. That's what they usually did, tell it to patients. So the question that the doctors asked me is, should we tell this patient about the complication risk of colonoscopy or not, in his interest? So this is just what, does anyone have an idea? Should we tell him about the 1% chance of a complication or not? Or does anyone think that you should do it? You think? Yes. Yeah, you should tell it. Yeah, yeah. Does anyone think don't tell? Some people usually do think you shouldn't tell. Yeah. And I think most doctors in the Netherlands would be inclined not to tell it, because they think there's a 1% chance of the complication, but if I tell it, there's a 90% chance that he will go away. So it's a really very high chance. And his family. So what they did is they talked with this about his family. So the family came in with him, and then the doctor said, do we tell him about the 1% chance that he will have a complication? And the family obviously said, no, don't do that. We had a lot of trouble bringing him in, and now you're going to tell him that there's a danger, and he will be out again. So please don't tell him. So that was what we did. So you see that was already something I want to come back to, that families are very important, usually, for autonomy. We go back to the concept of what's called relational autonomy, where you ask families also to think about what's the best for the patient. So we finally decided not to tell the patient. And fortunately, he didn't have the complication. So everything went well. But it could have happened, of course, that he would have had it. But this was the choice we made. And even though it's not really right when you look at the principle of respect for autonomy, you may say it's not really right not to tell them. But we did. So can I get the next slide, please? So this is really about informed consent. And informed consent is one of the basic concepts of autonomy in the respect for autonomy. And I'm going to tell you what the Dutch health law says about it. Ethics is different from law, but law is important still. So it's good to know what the law says, so that you can choose what you do. So Dutch health law says that the care provider has to provide the patients with the information they need to make a decision. So in this case, it would mean that you tell about complications. But the law has two exceptions. And that's obviously the ethical question. Do we have that exception here? This one is that the patient doesn't want to know. If the patient says, I don't want to know, then you have a right not to tell that patient. Sometimes patients do that. They come into the hospital and they say, please don't give me all the information because it scares me. I get sick of the information, so please don't tell me. But it's important to know that exception, you can't do that if it may lead to serious damage. So if it involves serious damage. So if he would have had a chance of, let's say, 70% of a complication, then you might say you still have such a chance. And the second exception is if the information itself can be damaging. And I think that this patient that I presented is an example of that exception, if you understand. So what we did tell that patient about the complication because we thought the information would be damaging for him, because he would run away. And he might have a disease that would not be treated because he was too scared. So we thought the reason for not telling him is that, and it's, I think, important to know and to realize, if you think about the principle of informed consent and autonomy, that sometimes for patients, information is damaging. They feel that they're hurt by information. And it may lead to consequences that you don't want. So this is a bit the legal background of the informed consent. Discussion was in fact about the ethics. Can we not tell the patient important information and withhold it? So that was that's the first example. I'll tell you a little bit about the history and the importance of the principle of autonomy and respect, and then we'll get back to other examples. And I'd like to have your views, even the views of the people who are online. Like they may put things in the chat if they want, don't they? I don't know if you told them, but I would be happy if they put things in the chat. But they know now, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, can I have the next one? I think we always talk about the autonomy part of the principle. We say very little about the respect, because the principle is not autonomy. The principle is respect for autonomy. And I think it's important to realize what we mean by respect, because it already tells you how to deal with autonomy. So respect usually is defined, it can be defined in two ways. There are two forms of respect. One of them is that you completely accept everything the way it is, or that you accept a person the way that person is. So if a person says to you, I don't want information, then you respect that. And you don't say to him, you should have, and I don't agree with you, but you just respect the wish. So you respect the way the person is. And there's also another example, another meaning of respect, and that's esteem. So it's respect for people who is very important or has great value. So that's why some people respect. That's why children should respect their parents, because their parents know more. They don't always respect their parents, of course, but in fact, we feel that they should respect their parents. That's a different form of respect. In bioethics, it's really respect about what a person finds important. So it's the first meaning of respect. It's about what other people think about. It's about how they want to live their lives. Even if we disagree, we should still respect. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. People may do things and live in ways that we find bad or we disagree with or we can't understand, but then still we need to respect that way of life. That's the basic idea about respect. What's also important to realize is that respect doesn't mean that you follow like a slave, that you always have to do what someone says. It may be that you can be critical. I mean, you all have examples of that. You may have a friend who, let me give an example. I had a friend once who was gambling a lot on the internet. And it's a friend who I respect very much. And I know that this is not his way of life. He had got a bit addicted to the gambling. He just lost himself and then went on gambling the whole night sometimes. So even though I respect what he's doing, I was critical. I said, this doesn't fit with what you want. So it's not really the way you want to live. So it means that you can say, or at least ask, is this what you really want? Or is it some kind of addiction or some form of mistake or something you don't really want? And then you can help someone living according to his own rules again. So please keep in mind these two things. One of them is people may do things that you find stupid or strange or ugly or I don't know what, but you still have to respect it. And the other thing is that respect means that you can sometimes be critical, and also with patients. Working as a general practitioner, I've sometimes said to patients, you want this treatment, but is it really what you want? So I was critical about that issue. So that's what needs, and that's all respect. So the next one, please. And that's the concept of autonomy. In fact, I think you all know, you have heard before, it's a word from Greek. And it in fact, two words in one. Because it's a combination of autos, which means own or self, your own, and nomos means law or rule or guideline maybe, or a moral rule. So nomos means that you live according to your own rule, to the rule that's important for you. And that can be different for other people. That's what autonomy really means. It's not, and there should be another sign there. It's not simply that you get the things that you want. It's living to your own rules. One of the problems, and I'll discuss examples of that, is that patients may lose their autonomy, partially or completely. And then it's difficult to apply the principle of respect for autonomy if the patient loses their autonomy. So that's about autonomy. And I'll go on a little bit about the history of the concept, because it's very important. It became important in bioethics in the late 1960s. And people say, and I think it's a bit true, that bioethics started with the concept of autonomy. When in medicine, people started to say that patients have their own decisions. That was the first movement in medical ethics and bioethics. And it was a response to paternalism. We'll get back to paternalism a little bit later, but it was a response. In fact, doctors deciding about patients without patients. That's what the short formula for paternalism is. Deciding about a patient without the patient, without asking the patient. So deciding about it. And it also had to do with the question, the realization that sometimes very advanced medical treatments don't make a lot of sense. They don't have a lot of meanings. So there was increasing attention to quality instead of quantity of life. And that brought up the question about autonomy. So if you say that a treatment is not always intending to prolong life, but also to make life better, then it's important what a patient finds better life. So then autonomy becomes important. And it started really as autonomy to refuse the doctor's offer and still receive care. So the doctor would tell you need this operation, then the autonomy principle would say that you have the right to refuse that treatment without losing the right to care. So you're still receiving care, but you can refuse some of the advices of doctors. So that was the first meaning of respect for autonomy. The next one, please. So this is also what they call, is what is called negative freedom. So you're free to refuse. You're free to say no. That's why we call it negative freedom. And you can say no to a doctor. You can say no to other people, but we're talking about the nurses here. It's also called freedom from interference. So it's in fact cutting loose the threads of authority. It's freedom of choice. Next one, please. And in those, it's also sometimes it's freedom from something. It's not yet freedom to do something, but it's freedom from what other people decide about or want to do. So next one, please. And what's really important, and we'll get back to that because it's like a basic idea, is that what John Stuart Mill in the 19th century, he was a British philosopher. He came with this idea that the idea of negative freedom, but he said there is one limit to negative freedom or to autonomy in general, and that's when you harm others. So people are free to live the way they want. They're free from interference from others, unless they harm other people by the way they want. And that's a crucial ethical question. When are you harming other people? If you're smoking in your home, are you harming other people? No. If you ask for a very, very expensive treatment, you may be harming other patients who need that treatment. So harm to others is the basic limit in this way of looking at autonomy. And we'll get back to that. So next one, please. Oh, yes. So as I already said, people have a right to do stupid things. For instance, continue to everybody. Maybe I'm not sure if you all find that stupid, but I think it's a bit stupid to continue smoking. But people have a right to do it as long as they don't harm others, me or others, because they're smoking in my neighborhood. So that's the idea. That's a name to recall if you want to. It's the way John Stuart Mill, who's one of the biggest philosophers in the 19th century, one of the greatest ones, thought about freedom and autonomy. So the next one, please. Yes, so that's the question. If you say you shouldn't harm others, who are the others? So how far away? And what type of harm am I talking about? I was already saying a very costly treatment. Is that enough harm to say that limits your autonomy? And which others? I mean, some people feel that the others should even include not only all the people that you may harm, but even animals. So there's quite a lot of ethicists who say that human autonomy is limited by the harm to others and maybe the harm to nature, even trees or plants. And I think that reasoning makes sense. I mean, we're going over those limits, but that's a different story maybe. But it's linked to this. Others may be fish and cattle, monkeys. I don't know. So this all raises a lot of questions. I think it's good to think about them, and you have to take a position. You have to think about what you find on others that you should take into account. So the next one. Another great 19th century philosopher that you must have heard of maybe, even though he is from Europe. He's not from Asia, but he's European. It's Immanuel Kant. He was a German philosopher. He's very difficult. So I wouldn't advise you to start reading books by Kant immediately. I tried and I didn't succeed. It's really difficult. But he was very important. And he says autonomy, it's similar to what Mill said, but a little bit different. He said, finally, and you can look at the third bullet. For him, autonomy is living according to one's own rules. So that's the literal translation of autonomy. And where Stuart Mill said you can do anything you want unless you harm others, Kant says it means that you live according to your own rules. So you have rules. It's not doing anything you want. You live according to your rules. You find important moral rules. And he said, in fact, everybody should have or two important rules. The first one is that you never treat other people as means to something. So as a tool or as something you use for your own benefit, but always treat them as autonomous subjects in their own, for their own. So always for their, what you could call their intrinsic value. Never treat them for their extrinsic value, so because they're profitable for you, but treat them for their intrinsic value. I think if Kant would have lived now, he would have had a difficult time because many people are just treated as tools and not for their intrinsic value. But this is the rule, he said. And the second rule is that you have to act in such a way that what you do could apply for everybody. So don't make an exception of yourself. Don't give yourself privilege. That's what, in fact, what he was saying. So you're not privileged. You have to treat others exactly the way you want to be treated. And that's important. That's an important rule, I think, also for medical ethics. So treat a patient the way you wanted to be treated if you were a patient. So that's act in such a way. That's a rule I think that can help a lot sometimes. So if you treat a patient, always think you would have wanted. Okay. Next. And this is the last, I think, philosopher from Europe that I introduced who has been writing a lot about autonomy, and that's the French philosopher Sartre. And that was in the 20th century. He was living, I think, from 1930 to 1990 or something like that. And he says, for him, and it's close to what Kant said, I must say. So autonomy is living according to a life plan that you have. An idea about when you think that your life is you've succeeded in life. So where your life has been a success. And I think the main thing he brought in is that autonomy is what he calls authenticity. So that it's really your deep conviction about what you find important. Then even when you can live according to that, then you live autonomous. Okay. Yes, so that was the list of philosophers. So yeah, oh yeah, that's and that's the reason why I forgot, but that's the reason why I wanted to show what Sartre thought about this. His idea is that respect for autonomy of others means helping them to live that life. So supporting them in their autonomy. That's what respect for autonomy means for Sartre. So you have to help them. Again, it's not just doing what they ask, it's helping them, making their life the way they want it. That can also be important in medical situations. I mean, sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it means that I've had patients in palliative care for who it was very important that they would be able to travel to graduation ceremony of the grandchild. And what they found, but they had to postpone the treatment for it. So, and then what I think it's really respecting autonomy to postpone the treatment, not give the treatment that you think is necessary, and then go to see the graduation ceremony. So because that was part of the life that they wanted. So it's just an example of how this principle can be important if you look at autonomy. Now the next one, please. Now I think, and this is the little tool that I was going to show to you. People are not always equally autonomous. As I already said, you need sometimes to help people to be autonomous. So there's in fact degrees of autonomy, and in fact, if you turn it around, it's degrees of incompetence, which is the mirror of autonomy, of course. You're not capable of taking autonomous decisions. So we have in Holland we've developed a small checklist that doctors can use easily, and nurses and everybody, to check the degree of autonomy. So to check if a patient is really able to take important decisions. And that tool starts with simply the ability to express a choice. So saying what you want. And that can be very simple. Say that it's like a choice for something that for food that you like, something like that. So it's a simple saying, I want this, I want. Some patients are not even capable of doing that, of course. If they're completely incompetent, they won't even be able to say, I want something. So that's the basic degree of autonomy. It's usually for things that are not very, very important, but it's the ability to express a choice. The second level is a bit higher up, is that people are at least able to understand the information that is relevant for them. So what you could ask a patient to know if they can do this is just to repeat the information that they gave you in their own terms. So I think if you really want to treat patients with respect to their autonomy, then this is a question you have to ask them. Could you repeat what I've been saying? Because then even only if they can do that, you know that they understood. And in Europe, but also in Indonesia, obviously, I think patients will usually say, yes, I understood. Yeah, of course, I understood. Yeah, thank you. Yes. And then, but if you ask them to repeat what you said, it's maybe a different story, or no story at all. But they just have difficulty saying what you told them. So it's basic. And it's so simple. Just asking, what did you understand of what I've been telling you? Complicated things. What did you understand? And what did you? So that's the second level of autonomy. The third level is that you understand also the meaning of the information for yourself, so that in fact you can apply it to your situation. So a doctor tells you that pneumonia, for instance, can lead to severe symptoms, and that you can even die from it. And then the third step is that you're able to understand that it has an importance for you. So you just don't understand the information. It's not only that you can reproduce the information, you also understand what it means for you. That's the third level. So you simply ask, is that different? Does it? Yes, of course. Simply ask, do you know what this means for you? What do you think it means for you? It's a simple third question. And the last question is that you ask people what they choose and what their reasons are. Why do they do? And that's in fact the highest level of autonomy. And often it's very difficult for people to explain why they want a treatment, or they don't want a treatment, or they want to go to another doctor or something, whatever. So And so you can say that the highest level of autonomy is that you're able to explain why you want something, why you think it's best to do. So, and I think there's some choices, even in hospitals and in healthcare, we only need the first level. Some choices, like if it's about the food that you get or something, the first level is enough. You want to test if they know more. But for important medical decisions, you may need level 4. We use this very also to see if the patient is competent or not to take decisions. So you ask those questions to know if they're competent. I'd like to have the next one, please. I'll just give you a case again. This is a woman called Margot who had an advanced directive. So she had written down what she wanted. That's one way to express your autonomy. That you down what you want. And the advanced directive said that she refused life-prolonging treatment if she would be severely demented. And she was on her way of becoming more and more demented. So she wrote this down when she still was able to write things. And she said, as an example, she said, for instance, if I don't recognize my children anymore, that's what you hear very often from people who feel that they lose their capacities. They say, the most terrible thing for me would be if I don't recognize my children. And that's understandable. I think everybody would find that really terrible. Now, and she got in that state. So her Alzheimer's continued, and she got into a state where she was very friendly with the children, but as if they were strangers. But the difficult issue was that she was really happy at that time. She was having no complaints. She was eating happily, sleeping happily, playing games with the other people, but she didn't recognize it. And she didn't have any memories of things, except very early memories. So she played children's games and things like that. She was really, and then she gets a pneumonia. Now the question that these doctors and nurses have: should we follow her advanced directive and not give her antibiotics to save her life, or should we give the antibiotics? Now, what would you? If we stop here, what would you think? Should she receive antibiotics or not? And why? Who would say no? I can just have fingers. If you, I won't ask you afterwards. So you can just safely raise your finger without any fear. So you would say no. No. Okay. And who would say yes? She should receive antibiotics. Nobody said that. You said yes. I'm gonna ask you because you. Why do you think she should receive them?
Because she's already demented
Right.
a bit further.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Oh, now it becomes scary. Yeah.
I might answer wrong. Because only me who say yes. So I think that because she's already get a bit further entered, and although she has an advanced directive, but it is also like we don't know the exact order whether these antibiotics will make her more severe because she's already a bit more demented. So
Right.
for her well-being.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Someone wants to say something why she should not get the antibiotics. If you want, I mean, if you, I want to be interesting.
Because on the fourth sentence, it said that she feels like prolonged treatment
Yes,
if she will be severely treated. So
Yeah.
we have to respect her autonomy when he has when she has her own right to
yeah,
choose what she wants
right,
when she's
Yeah.
still
yeah,
healthy.
yes. Okay, sometimes what doctors do in these situations is that they ask the patient. So they ask her, do you want antibiotics or not? She may say yes. And then doctors feel there's a problem because she's already said that she doesn't want. And now she says yes. Would you still not give them then? What do you think? If she now says yes. And she may not understand what he asked. She just said yes, or she don't know if she knows what he's talking.
I think she is not capable to answer
Right.
because her sickness. Maybe we can ask her children or her family
Yeah,
instead.
right, sure, yeah. So what you say, in fact, is if she says yes now, we do not have to take that into account because she can't understand. And and I think I'm right. I think you're right. Because it's not an autonomous decision in the sense that she has thought about the consequences. Because it may be just saying yes to everything. That's what people do. If you ask them a question politely, they say yes. Well, so, but still, for some, I mean, this is a complicated discussion, and I will tell you why. There are doctors, especially in nursing homes in Holland, who have many of these patients, who say that they would still give the antibiotics, so they would follow Tiwi's advice. They will give it.
Oh.
Yeah, they will give it. And they will give it because they say the patient who was writing the advance directive is the same person as the patient who is now in the nursing home. Because she lost everything she had. She's become a completely different person. Sometimes, what you sometimes see in Alzheimer's disease is that patients' characters, for instance, change completely. So you could imagine that she was a very grudgy, angry person first, and then in her Alzheimer's disease, she changed into someone very happy and nice. And then now she says, now she has a pneumonia. So these doctors say, but that makes it very difficult. They may say that this is a different person. So the person who was really competent cannot take any decision about another person. So that's the basic idea. And this is not a trick. It sounds a bit like a trick to me. But I've spoken to nursing home physicians who are really convinced that's true. That Alzheimer's so much changed sometimes the personality of their patients that an advanced therapy written in the competent phase of their life just wasn't valid anymore. And now the consequence of some people from that is that they say don't write advanced directives because they don't say anything about what you want when you're in that situation. And the basic idea here was that she wasn't visibly suffering from the fact that she didn't recognize her children. That was an idea she had back then, 10 years ago. But now she was just greeting her, she was playing with her children, but she didn't know who they were. And these say, well, what's so bad about that? It's you wouldn't want it when you're still competent, but if you're so now there's been, and that's the last theoretical thing I want to say is there's an American philosopher called can I show the next one because I thought it was this is Ronald Dworkin, and he made a difference between what he called experiential interests and critical interests. And he would say, so critical interests are things that are crucial to your life. There may be, for instance, there are really deep convictions about what you find important. So, for instance, one of the things that is really what you would call a critical interest is recognizing your children and being able to communicate with them about their history and about the life you had together. And I wasn't able to do that because she had no idea about it anymore. So critical interests are the things that are very deep and crucial. Experiential interests you could call are undeep references. A bit like what I said just a couple of minutes ago about the food you want or the color of the car that you want. Those are, he says, are not deep, but are just preferences, and they may change from one day to another. But critical interests are the things that you found important throughout your life. They may be religious convictions also, convictions, or moral convictions. So, and so he says, he would say that the advance directive that this woman, Margot, made was in a period of, it was an expression of critical interest. And then they should be followed. So he would follow you and say, you don't give the treatment because it was critical for her that she could recognize her children. She said, if I don't do that, I don't want to live with you. So that's the difference of, and so there's different views on this, and some philosophers say you should follow. So I think that's something that when you're doing this Master of Bioethics training, is something that you have to think about. What would I follow? Would I follow the things that I consider that are crucial interests? Or would I follow the idea that she's changed so much and become a different person? So the old Margot of the advanced directive wasn't even there. Someone else also called Margot, but that was the only. So I think it's an important and it's an important question about autonomy. Yes. So right. Can I have an action? So one of the things, and I think you've heard this before, because we've been speaking about it here too, is that autonomy in the West has sometimes been conceived or thought about in terms of individuals making their own choices all on their own. Like if they were in an isolated environment and had to think about it completely on their own. We know, of course, that and that comes mainly from the area of ethics of care, that we're all dependent on each other for the choice we make. We're never completely isolated. And I say that here, I think that feeling is a lot stronger in Indonesia than in Western Europe. We sometimes tend to forget that and become very individualistic. So we learned from you also that autonomy is in fact rational, and that it's not that good care is often not based on such an individual idea about autonomy, but it aims to make the person autonomous again. For instance, psychiatric patients living at home, they're supported to become more autonomous. Well, just a few words, and that might be just interesting. There's quite a lot of brain scientists who wonder if there's anything like autonomy. And it might be nice also to think about that too. So there are people who say that everything we do, every choice we make, even moral choices, even critical choices that Dworkin was talking about, are chemical processes in our brains. So we had you can take the next one. we had we had two new scientists who said this is in Dutch, but it means the free will doesn't exist. Free will doesn't exist. So there you go with autonomy. There is no autonomy, no free will. And what he says in this book, what he shows also with experiments, is that if you think you take a decision, an autonomous decision, then then that decision usually comes after your brain already chose a position. So you have some illusions. It's an illusion that we decide. So we have all these reasonings. We think, what's best? What should we do? He says the brain has already decided before, and they can show that with experiments. So the next one. And there's another Dutch neuroscientist who says everything we choose is in our brain from conception onwards, or from pregnancy onwards. So his idea is that what we decide is in fact determined by characteristics, by properties that are fixed in the womb already. So whether we become, for instance, hetero or homosexuals, is determined in the womb, he says, or transsexuals. So is sexual, but also he says political orientation is already decided in the womb, and there's very little you can do about it. Even though you think you're autonomously thinking about those things, they're very spirituality. So he's called Schwab. I think he's a bit deluded, but there's some truth maybe. So next please. And as I already said, so we only consciously decide about something seconds after the brain has already taken it. So the conscious decision comes afterwards. It's more like a justification than a decision. The decision is taken first.
But can we have only 5 minutes more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let me see. This was a very interesting guy. You don't know about Jeroen Schuurigheid. He was saying that. He was a very brave young Dutch person who saw someone who made very suspicious movements in an airplane. And what was happening was that this person was putting together a bomb to hijack the airplane. And then he went on in and he saved the airplane, in fact. And then what he said in the newspapers afterwards, I didn't think for a moment. I just jumped. So he, in fact, what these neuroscientists say, you don't take a decision, just jump. So completely jumped. Right, let's go on. I'll tell you when to stop, because I think I have a few too many slides if I have only 5 minutes. I mean, it's very, no, that's it. There will, so go on, please. Paternalism. Yeah, this is I'll just in a minute, I'll tell you, this is a very interesting story. This is about paternalism, and paternalism, as I already said, is doing something for someone without that person. So without involving that person. And there's a very beautiful, quite old paper of the editor-in-chief, the New England Journal of Medicine, who wrote about his own disease. He was a specialist in esophagus cancer, and the disease he got was exactly esophagus cancer. So it was the disease that he knew most about in the world. He was one of the big experts. And then what he described in this personal paper in the New England Journal of Medicine was that all knowledge, he was terribly informed. But all this knowledge did not help him make a choice about treatment. So he said, what I needed was a friend who could tell me what would be the best choice for me. And even though I knew everything, I still needed someone who knew me as a living person and who knew what was important for me in my life. And he said, in fact, I needed paternalistic friend. So he went to see a GP in a village that he knew very well, an old friend, who told him what he thought he should do. So that's helping even the best informed people with their autonomy. So the next one. Yeah, next one. Next. I'll just, no, next one. Next one. This is maybe the last thing that I'd like to about how complicated the concept of autonomy can be. I don't know if you ever heard about self-binding contracts for patients. No, well, maybe some of you did. It's something that's sometimes done with psychiatric patients, and this is an example of such a patient. That's a person who has recurrent psychosis. So he's very good periods where everything's quiet and he's completely working and everything goes well. And then sometimes he gets into a psychosis and gets very violent and has suicidal things like that. And when he's not psychotic, he understands very well. And he takes a very autonomous decision to be treated. He says, if I get into a psychosis, I hope you will treat me. But as soon as he gets psychotic, we know that from bipolar people, they usually start refusing. They say, there's nothing the matter. I'm Napoleon, but nothing's the matter. You don't have to treat me. I'm strong and I don't have to be treated. Now, what this happened a few times with this patient, and then what the doctor and he decided to do was draw up a contract that said if he would be in a psychosis, his wish should be followed. So during the psychosis, he would say, I don't need to be treated. I refuse the treatment. Which was, well, you can doubt if that's an autonomous choice, because probably he was not very competent, because he couldn't really explain at that time. But he was very strongly saying, I don't want treatment. So this is, I think, a very interesting way of dealing with autonomy, that you have a contract that says, disregard my autonomy. And that's maybe the most autonomous thing to do for him. So to be autonomous, he had to give up his autonomy in the periods where he was psychotic. You understand? So that's a complicated thing, and we do that not very often, but sometimes with psychotic patients, and it works quite well. The only problem is sometimes during the psychosis they get so violent that you can't even do it. But so that's that's in fact self-inflicted loss of autonomy. And that's another example where you have that, and I'm not going to discuss, that's the example of addiction, where addicted people lose their autonomy because of the self-inflicted behavior. So that's another way in which people lose their autonomy by the things they do, and not because their brain is getting functional. Please, next one. Next one. Oh, that was, no. I mean, next one. Yeah. This was the addiction example. So, to conclude, and maybe the takeaway messages, if you want, is that there are two senses of autonomy that are both important in healthcare. The one is the autonomy to refuse treatments, to not do what doctors and nurses say. And the other sense of autonomy is that you are able to live as you want to live, as you choose to live, and to live the life that you want. And in both cases, both forms are important for medicine. I think what's also a take-home message is that autonomy is always relational. But I think that for you, it's not the most revolutionary message, because I think you already do that for you. The main limit to autonomy is harm to others. So it doesn't go farther than when you start harming other people. And the last thing, so that the little set of questions that I gave to you is a simple tool to assess the degree of autonomy or of incompetence of the patient. And that means that's also an assessment of the extent to which you have to help someone to become autonomous. So I'd like you, I mean, it's in the, you will have the slides, and so these questions are in the somewhere. And that's really something you can use, and that doctors in the clinic can use, and they do use it a lot in college. There's simple questions to assess the degree of autonomy. Okay,
All right.
was that 5 minutes early?
No,
No.
it's fine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for such a thought and provoking rich presentations from Dick, and also the cases that I those are these very interesting cases, and I'm sure we are all having a lot of questions. But before we go to the question, I have a message from the organizer to read Prof. Dick's CV. For those who do not know yet, Prof. Dick is a professor of ethics at University of Amsterdam. His background is both medical and philosophy. He has authored numerous influential publications on the end of life, decision making, physician assisted, and ethical challenges in healthcare. He studied medicine and philosophy at the University of Groningen and Sorbonne, Paris. He completed his master and doctoral studies at University of Groningen and has actively involved in international teaching, research, and collaboration, particularly between the Netherlands and Indonesia. Yeah, so now I'm going to overview time for question. I have two questions online, but before I read this question from online, I will give time for all of you if you have questions here who are on site. Yes, please. Please mention your name and from where. Maybe we give to Ibu first.
Thank you. First, let me introduce myself and admit maybe I'm the only one here that's not a doctor. I teach law from the Faculty of Law. My name is Anna. So it is interesting that your example concerning the case, the dementia patients, but maybe this is my just my 2 cents. In Indonesia, like we have to be very careful if that happen. I mean, because under the Indonesian concept, that person who is a demand, they are under legal incapacity because they are under they don't have any legal capacity to make decisions. That's why in kind of situation, then the doctor they can only follow what the patients want. Like they may be put under the guardian, and the guardian is the one who has the competency to make decisions. So if the doctor then refuse to give treatment while actually the guardian has a different ideas or they want otherwise, then this can be a legal case.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Or please go on. Yeah.
Okay. So unless the patient makes a directive advance self-binding contract before, then that contract is binding. So the will of the patients is legally binding if make it in writing. But if they only say that I refuse, clear or there is no missing admissible evidence for that, then I think the doctor should think twice because it will jeopardize their positions as a health service professionals.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the comment. I think doctors should think twice in these cases always because they're so complicated. But what this example shows is that even if there is a legally binding directive, the situation is sometimes very complicated. And it's sometimes really hard to decide to that kind of directive for a patient who seems to be enjoying life in a very simple way. And that's what it makes it so difficult for these doctors to do that, especially if they have the feeling that with treatment they may continue this joyful life, and they have to follow a directive that would stop it. So for them, and that's what makes it such a big dilemma. Even though there is in this case there was a legally binding directive. So I think even if obviously they have guardians. Margot also had a guardian. But they also, in fact, have to follow the advanced protocols. But they also were hesitant whether she really would want this if this was the situation. So, what do you want to?
Just things become more complicated if it is based on a religious belief, like Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they prohibit blood transfusions.
Yes.
So I mean, this is maybe a very interesting issue to discuss, and we should have more.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also about Jehovah's Witnesses, there was, I actually had a case about Jehovah's Witnesses, but I dropped it. It's a very interesting thing, especially when it concerns children. So the children of Jehovah's Witnesses who, but let's not do that, then run out of time.
Yeah. So we have
Definitely, we'll probably can start today maybe. So
Yeah.
there's another.
Yeah, and more research on this maybe, Bu Anna. All right. We have two more questions from online participants, Prof. From Jonathan Emilio. Good afternoon. Prof. Thank you so much for sharing your very interesting presentation. Or maybe, Jonathan, are you going to open your mic? Okay, I will read this question. I have a question. To what degree should the patient life values, quality versus quantity of life, influence medical when they conflict with the physician standard of care or recommendation? Yeah, next question.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Jonathan, for your, that's a really important question. Because there's sometimes a conflict between what patients want and what the doctor feels is good medical care. And what's in the guidelines for even for good medical care. So those situations are really, really very difficult. We've been discussing those cases in our hospital quite often. And well, one of the things that I think are important is that when you talk about shared decision making, it means that you try to integrate medical science with what patients feel is important for them. And it may sometimes mean that you also negotiate a little bit with the standards that you have. So you will adapt the standards to the convictions and, let's say, to use the term of Dworkin, the critical interest of patients. So if really a patient says, I don't agree, I don't want this treatment because I have another important thing that I want to for instance, as the example that I already give, if a treatment is going to stop me from attending the graduation ceremony of my grandson, then I don't want the treatment, even though it is the standard and it's the best treatment from a medical point of view. It may need to be adapted. It has to be adapted to the values that the patient has. But what I do think is that you have a right as a physician to bring that into the open. So to discuss it with that patient, to say, I have a standard and I would really think that it's medically speaking, it's really the best for you to follow that standard and to do the treatment. And in the end, if you talk about shared decision making, I think if the patient keeps saying it's my value that I want to do that, I want to do a different thing, then I think you should follow finally the values of the patient. If you have another remark, you can chat it. If you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, thank you, Prof.
You're
So,
welcome.
there is always a conflicted value perhaps between medical doctor and
And maybe,
fair views of people.
Yeah.
It's depend on the context perhaps, yeah.
yeah,
And it's depend on also the negotiation between
yeah,
this medical care provider
Yeah.
from the patient and family. Yeah, I hope it's answered question, Jonathan. And there is another question from from Fabian. Mas, can, yeah. Given advances in medical technology and diagnostic, how should autonomy evolve at all to include digital information, AI-based risk prediction, and patient data privacy?
yeah, it's also a very good question. Yeah, because obviously, patients already use digital information a lot, I think here, but at least in Europe also they do a lot. And I think there's no way, that's not something we're going to stop. So I think patients' autonomy will be, patients will use that kind of information to come to their autonomous choices and preferences. And I think the only thing we can do as doctors, and that's something that still is in its infancy in the West, is have a system to check whether the information they got is valid information. Because there's obviously a lot around all in artificial intelligence that does not take into account the important things. So the one thing I would say to begin with is that you have to warn patients that there's a lot of non-information around in the internet and in artificial intelligence systems. But still, you have to take into account what they learn from that kind of systems. And it will play an increasingly important role in the decades to come. So it will become ethically more important. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe because now doctor is not the only source of information, yeah, Prof. So
No.
there's also AI and also
Yes,
social media
yeah.
that can influence
Yeah.
the
We will need the physical doctor, so the person. We will keep needing that person to balance the information.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. We have. Is there any question from on-site participants? No. If no, there is one participant raising hand online. Please, Ibu Ida. You can open mic. Yeah. Yeah.
We hear you.
Still mute.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Dick, for the
No, yeah.
very insightful presentation. Let me introduce
Belum
myself.
kedengaran.
Hello. Hello.
Nggak masuk speaker ya kalau dari sana. Besarin aja.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's okay. It's okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Dick, for the very insightful presentation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ida. I'm a clinical psychologist. In my practice, I found the case how important a professional mental health to keep a patient privacy. Most of psychology patients get a stigma from their environment, especially from their family. Therefore, I usually choose to keep the patient condition confidential from their family. However, this condition makes me confused because in some cases, patients experience suicidal thought or even self-harm. This condition includes psychiatric emergency. I need caregiver who can approach or engage to the patient to keep the patient safe. All of them said me, I don't want my family knowing my condition. And when I ask the patient as to contact person to the patient as a caregiver, they give me their whole life they give me their friend Would they live far away? So what I want to ask here, how can I maintain my patient autonomy, because this condition it is important for the family who live with the patient knows this condition. Should I tell the family to keep safety the patient or follow the patient preference? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I had some difficulty understanding because of the sound here. Did you understand completely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, she's a clinical psychologist.
Yes.
There is a stigma of
Yeah.
patients who are coming to her, and then, but his question is that the patient who come to her saying that he doesn't want the family knows about the experience of patients, and what should she do, whether she to maintain patient autonomy and preference, to keep the information secret, or should she tell to family about the experience of the patient. So
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Yeah. Was that the question? Is that, because I couldn't.
Is that the
First of all, that's
question,
really-
Rita?
Yeah. Was that what you wanted to ask?
Is that the question that you want to ask?
Yes. Yeah, okay, good.
Yes.
Well,
That's
it's
right.
really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. Should I follow, or because what you seem to say is that if I follow her wish, then I cannot inform the family, and it may be important for her to inform the family, maybe for some reason. I think there should be a way in between. Sometimes it's important in ethics to, if you have a dilemma, to look at other possibilities. So a possibility between the two. And what I would do in this case, I think, is that I would talk about these issues with the parent and explain why it might be important to inform the family, even though she is not in favor of it, and what you could do to finish the stigma. So because I think the issue here is between stigma and the fact that it's important that the family knows about the condition of their family member. And if the patient would be say you're not allowed, and if the patient keeps saying that you're not allowed to tell my family, then I think in the end you have to follow. But what I would try to do is to explain to a patient why you feel that the family should know, and how you could diminish the stigma. So sometimes we can get trapped into a dilemma with only two possibilities, whereas there may be more possibilities than the two that you see at the beginning. So sometimes you need to be creative in finding a middle way. So not do A, not do B, but go between. So I think in this case, I will try to find a middle solution. But if that doesn't work, then finally, I think you have to follow the wish of the patient that says you shouldn't inform us.
All right, this would be a middle solution, yeah, Prof.
Sorry?
Middle solution.
Yeah, start with a middle way solution.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Bu Ida, I hope it's answered your question. And is there any question from this on-site participants? There is no question online now. So if there is no question, next we will move to a special part of this program. So we will invite two master students from Mass Bioethics program to answer question related to your master thesis to Prof. Dick, and we are hoping Prof. Dick will also give feedback to them. So there are two students here, Mas Daki and Mas Afgan. So I will give first opportunity to Mas Afgan. Oh, Mas Afgan, you hear my first. Oh, up to you, which one? We are going to start first, but no more than 5 minutes each, so that Prof. Dick will do feedback. Yeah, please, Mas Yaki. Mas Yaki, all right. Okay, yes. Ya, jangan banyak-banyak. Jangan banyak-banyak ya, brief and also questions. Ya, boleh.
Okay, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Zaki Wisnumurti. I usually call by the name Zaki. Or if Zaki is for you, you can call me Jack. So, I'm a student in the bioethics program, and this is my research plan for my thesis. The type perceptions of academic community toward the implementation of bioethics education at the Faculty of Medicine in my university is University 11 Maret. It's on Surakarta, about 2 hours from Jogja. Yes. Next. So, yeah, yeah. So for institute talks in my university right now, bioethics education is still in development, and right now is on offer twice in 6 year medical program. First, in the first semester is an undergraduate phase, and sixth semester is when the transition from the undergraduate phase to the clinical phase. The curriculum is spent 4 years undergraduate study, and the next is 2 years of clinical clerkship, or we call COAS. The problems from my perspective is probably the first is because the bioethics in my university is not currently, I'm not disrespecting, it's taught by the forensic specialist medicine and health law specialist because right now in my university we have this forensic specialist who teach bioethics, and some of the lecturers that hold the master degree in medical education. So the hope is me as the graduate from the bioethics program is to continue this program in my university. So from my perspective, the limited exposure because students only get exposed by the education of bioethics twice. First in the first semester, and the second is bioethics like principles introduction in the sixth semester. But after that, we go into the clinical thing and they never get any bioethics at all. So they just focus on the clinical skills. And that's still important because doctor is clinical skills. And next, for the study design, my research is under a qualitative case study. But maybe what I want to ask is if my research is good using technology or maybe another methods like very phenomenology, and maybe I can have suggestions from you, Professor. Okay, next. So the practices what I target to have to be my participants in research is first is making clinical and medical lecturers. So the teachers who teach bioethics and some of the clinical lecturers in the collection program. And then the medical students, I take the final year clinical stage because they are the one step closer to become a doctor. So if I get the first semester, the information they give is not rich, I think. So I just take the one who almost to become a doctor. And I also include administrative staff involved in curriculum like my stream of academics, and we have to have program. First is undergraduate program is the 4 years, and the 2 years clinical is the second program. Okay, next. And data collection, I'm using semi-structured interviews only because the condition to make focus group discussion is hard because the students is spread almost in the central, like they have a program in this hospital that 4 hours from the city and another in 2 hours. So to get together to get them in Zoom, it's hard because every place, every hospital has their own schedule. So it is more possible to interview one-on-one with the students and the teachers. And this interview can from they can give insights because what I want to explore is first, the concept is about quality of education because right now we only have very few exposure, just twice in for 6 years, and then about the effectiveness of the teaching methods because the very limits very few the exposure and the relevance to the future clinical practice because finally what we did in the medical school is to reflect on the on the how we become a doctor.
Yeah. What's your question then, Mas?
Okay, so my question for my research is first, with this type of research, can I use case study or maybe Prof. Willems have some other suggestions about the research and any other suggestions about what I need to explore from the practitioners? Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. It seems like a very appropriate way of doing this. I wouldn't do it in a different way. I think I'd have semi-structured interviews like you do. And I think your way of analyzing would be phenomenology. I would think the same because otherwise you would get into, for instance, narrative inquiries, but that's not really the case. You have let's say a time interview with your participants. So I think a phenomenological approach, like a bottom-up type of analysis, is really what you need. And there's not really a theory that you try to test. So it's also not a theoretical approach. It's really, I think phenomenology is what we also try to do with this, in this form of data collection. And what you're talking about is the bioethics, the education quality. I was just thinking about, have you already done the interviews or are you going to do them?
I'm going to
Oh, okay, yeah. So there's still, yeah. What I'm usually very interested in is what, especially in students, is what their needs are. So I don't see it in the interview guide, but I think it's what you could ask them what they find difficult problems and what the educational needs of students are. So how they define ethical. In fact, it's a study that we also did in Amsterdam, and Amaria from Buro Kilto has found that in her teach, she's been interviewing medical students about what needs they have, and that was very fruitful. So I would add the needs. Felt needs of the students as one of the subjects in the topic list. I think.
so like the student suggestions about the teaching methods.
Oh yeah, that obviously that's very good too. That yeah. Oh yeah, you should. Yeah, these are good questions. But I was missing the one about needs, about what they need to, what their own needs are. So it's, that's, no, but these are very good, these are very good questions. I'm not so, though I'm not so sure that students can tell you very much about the effectiveness of these methods. I'm not quite sure because they usually don't know. I mean, it's up to you, in fact, to see if the methods are effective, and it depends on what's your criterion for effectiveness. For instance, if you want them to be able to memorize things, or if you want them to be able to solve a classical case. So it's difficult for them, I think, to say. So you might skip that question and put one lead in, but it's up to you, frankly. But that would be my advice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Mas Yati and Prof. Dix for your input.
Thank you.
We now go to next students. Afghan. Please, Mas Afghan, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity given to me. My name is Afghan, like something that like in Afghanistan, Afghan.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Dr. Dick Willems. Check. First of all, Willems, do you pet maybe a dog?
Animals, pet
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, we have a very beautiful white cat.
Wow.
Yeah, you do it, but she's more my wife's cat than my cat.
Oh.
You know.
Okay, so you are part of the massive global phenomenon. For millions of people, a dog, a cat, or even a hamster is more than just an animal. They are a member of the family, and this is deep and complex relationship of animal and people. Is the core of the exciting and growing field. The name of field is companion animal studies. So, what exactly are we talking about? Companion animal studies is multidisciplinary field that examines the human-animal bond from variety of perspective. It's not just about veterinary medicine, although that's surely part of it. It's about psychology, sociology, anthropology, and even economics. We study how pets impact in our mental and physical health, how they shape social action, and how our attitude towards them have evolved over and over time. My research is fundamentally underpinned by the One Health paradigm. One Health. This framework recognizes that the health of human, the health of animal, and the environmental health are all interconnected. By study ethical dimension of the pet ownership, my research not only examine the well-being of companion animal, but also highlight the role of shaping human health and creating a healthier, more balanced ecosystem for everyone. My own research gives deeper into a critical area of this field, companion animal ethics. I'm currently conducting study the special region of Yogyakarta to understand the ethical dimension of pet ownership in the province that represent maybe the diversity of Indonesia in Yogyakarta. My research uses mixed approach with convergent parallel design, and this research is exploratory. This means I counting both quantitative and qualitative with mixed method at the same time in the parallel design, analyzing them separately and using them to finding the more comprehensive understanding of the issue. Part of the quantitative, I maps out the socio-demographic profile of the pet owners, like gender, mental status, age, economic status, and etc. Thank you. to get descriptive picture of the owner in Yogyakarta. And I also examine pet attachment using the LAPS, Lexington attachment to pet. It's an instrument that commonly used in psychological studies. I then use bivariate analysis to examine the relationship between this socio-demographic factor and the level of pet attachment. But number only tell part of the story maybe. So I also conduct in-depth interview to gather qualitative data to allow me to explore the specific form of human animal bond, such as zoea, the form of therapeutic bond between owner and the animal that can be defined as the antithesis of the zoonosis, zoea. And second is anthropomorphism, bond that built because of human-like feature. So animal consider as friend, as our brother, and the specific baby schema. The baby schema or kidden schema is a bond that built by infantile feature that consider animal as babies. In Indonesia is very common. The cat is called by anak bulu, the baby of youth. Yeah. And crucially, I also delve into pet owners' ethical conversation, looking at the framework like deontological framework about animal intrinsic value, and also the utilitarianism, maybe the role of animal is utility, yeah, still utility, and the to ethics to uh, uh, animal and the ethics of care, the animal companionship. By combining the both qualitative and quantitative data, my ultimate goal is to create a comprehensive draft of the ethical guidelines for pet ownership on the special region of Yogyakarta. This research aims to provide a localized framework for responsible and compassionate animal care. Maybe input and advice from Dr. Deep is expected. Maybe about the ethical or law practice in animal welfare in Netherlands, like pet insurance maybe, and etc. Thank you.
All right, all right, thank you, Mas Afgan. Please give comment on his thesis about human animal relation.
Yes, this is really amazing for me. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's really I'm a bit taken aback. I'm actually thinking about that beautiful white cat that we have at home, and the way we sometimes I sometimes have a feeling that we put much too much into the, as you already said, the anthropomorphic things, and then we get angry with the cat if she doesn't respond to that anthropomorphic idea of being able to, when we're a bit tired, we hope she's quiet and she will take account of our wishes. So that's really. One thing I was wondering about is if in your research it makes it different which kind of pet it is, because I think the anthropomorphic things are very common with dogs, because dogs have a bit a similarity, maybe more than cats, because cats are a lot more, I think, independent and more distinct. And I would think that goldfish even more independent and difficult to bond with. So I was wondering if in your research you make a difference between those different types of pets. And I think one of the interesting issues obviously is to what extent you can use pets to replace people who have gone away, or and the role that pets can play in loneliness. I've always been very impressed by the role of both dogs and cats for lonely older people who lost all their relatives and who then take an animal relative, in fact, that they that's just there for them. And so I was wondering if you're also looking into that kind of thing.
Okay, maybe about the animal, the the field of study is specific on companion animal. Maybe they include dog is cat, and in the Japanese people, bird is the part of the life. So it's they include. Birds.
Birds.
Yeah, bird. Not birds.
No, birds.
Flying.
Flying.
And can be mapping to them to the shape of the form. Each the animal that's there in the honor of this person.
So you're not looking at like animals, but some people keep ants.
Ants.
Yeah.
You're not looking into ants.
Ants is
No, no, because I can understand because you don't see their eyes.
Yeah.
So one thing is that much of the contact with them obviously is through the eyes, and that's why dogs. I've heard that dogs are so people have such close relationship with their dogs because dogs in their look have something similar to humans. And one of the particular things is that they can draw up their eyebrows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like in a bit of an asking way, like if they're, what are you saying?
Yes.
So that's why I think, that's why I asked whether you make a difference with. So, but you look at dogs, cats, and birds. Yeah. And the birds are very interesting for me.
And maybe the exotic like iguana, the lizard, maybe.
Yeah.
It's common in Jakarta.
Yeah.
The
The homely iguana. Yeah, they don't take komodos for. But I find it fascinating. It's a really interesting thing, and it makes me also think a little bit about what it would mean for ethics in general that include these forms, so that you include animals into the family of ethics, let's say. So it becomes part of ethics. So the relationship we have with animals may say something about the relationships that we have with other people. So it might be good to think about that issue as well. So it's not only for the animals, but also it also has an impact on how we think about ethics. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm sorry, I can't tell you very much about. I know there's a big branch of animal ethics in the Netherlands. There are many people working on it, but it's not really my field. So I'm not very aware of what they're focused on, because I know there's quite a lot of ethics on cattle as well. So let's say economic animals. They're not pets, of course, but like animals to be used for economic reasons, and to what extent you can use them as. I mean, I was quoting Kant saying that you should never take a human being as a tool or an instrument, but you should always look at it as an autonomous being. And this might also apply.
Yeah.
Well, but with cattle, of course, that's difficult, but it's still possible. It's really fascinating.
Thank you for the input.
You're welcome.
Any other question, Mas Afgan? Maybe on methodology or something?
Maybe it's the methodology is out and this is the exploratory. So
Yeah. So you do mixed methods, that means you do a quantitative part and a qualitative part. Yeah. What's the relationship between the two? What is the relationship between qualitative and quantitative?
Actually the main of the tools is I take it from the research of single psychology in Puerto Rico. They maps out about the community animal. But it is modified to analyze the electron.
Oh, I see. So, but you use the qualitative interview to deepen the understanding that you get from the quantitative. It's a very beautiful way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prof. And Prof. Also student, we have now reached the end of our today's program, and we hope this today lecture will enrich our understanding on the socioeconomy, paternalistic, and also, your research as well, perception of staff, education, and also animal and human relation. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Prof. Dix. With that, I will officially close this guest lecture. Thank you so much for students who are here and also those who are participating online. Again, thank you so much. Good afternoon. And I will see you again at our another event. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. For the students, tomorrow, don't forget to come again. And there will be a lecture from Prof. Dix on ethics and the scientific discipline. It starts at 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock. So, great as well. So much. Selamat sore semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. Foto outside. Don't forget. Di luar ya? Oke.
Di luar sini.
Ya. Pak Dik. Foto.
Take pictures. Yeah.
Oh, Rafi, take it somewhere from.
Oh ya, oke. Silakan dia aja, Mbak.
Di sini.
Oh gitu. Pak Dik in here.
Oh yeah.
That is just what? Okay.
After this, you finish.
Gimana, Ma? Praktik.
Baru di mana? Gimana posisi?
Terus kita
Here?
berdiri. Jalan.
Yeah, but I'd like to have the co-presenters here as well.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I was trying to understand.
Nggak lawan cahaya, Kak.
Ya.
Ya, makasih.
Yeah.